Welcome back. We still have our guest here in the studio. So, Tanwa, you were talking about your experience with a policeman. What you were looking at is how much of that passion for the protection of Nigerians trickles down from the hierarchy to the man on the street, the policeman on the street.
Yes. And it's a major problem because we're even talking about even in terms of weapons. Why are you giving them high-powered rifles, automatic weapons? And you're saying, oh, but, you know, we care for the citizens, but here you go, automatic weapons that are supposed to be used in a hostile war zone. And these are some of the questions, really, that we should be asking. And there's so many additional other aspects to this situation. But we keep talking about this thing called community policing. And the truth is, this sort of incidents actually puts us puts the police force anyway, major steps back in that area. When you're talking about community policing, it really isn't just about, you know, well, it's mostly about going out there, making street inquiries. You see a group of boys coming, you can talk to them, ask them questions. Young man, how are you today? What's going on? Where are you coming from? Okay, where are you from? Where are you going? Okay, good. Please, don't get into any trouble. Or, okay, yes, officer. And then they go. Interacting with the people on the streets. We actually don't see that all the time. A few of them do, though.
We don't see it at all.
Well, you know, sometimes, for instance, even on 3rd Mainland Bridge, the rapid response squad that we usually have there, they usually help out a lot. We know there are a lot of good policemen out there, but guess what? We're only as strong as your weakest link. Yeah. And we're only going to be talking about the ones that do the bad things. So I think the police needs to figure out their overall strategy. If you know that you need members of the public to actively work alongside with you, providing information and letting you know these things, then your people, especially the ones who interact with the public, also need to know that, look, we're not just here as crime fighters or crime stoppers, we're also here as problem solvers. If you see something that's out of place, try to help. You're here to help. Like he said, the citizens are the ones who are paying you, so you need to look at them as your bosses.
Client.
Exactly, and help them out. So I think going forward, what is the police doing? And maybe Mr. Frankenbach can explain, but what are they doing to make sure that this does not repeat itself again within the force? How are you going to keep morale up? How are you going to make sure that every day the policeman wakes up, he understands where his diligence lies, where his duty lies?
Okay, Ms. Amba, there are 3 things here that Tanwa has put them all together in one word. What's the police doing to ensure that this doesn't repeat itself? But Mr. Esekaibe actually listed them out. He mentioned 1 policeman to 1,680 Nigerians. That's going by the world
UN standard.
UN standard. That Nigeria is way below that. So we know that one's a question of the number of people, population of the police force. Then the question of funding. Do they get the equipment they need? Do they get the right kind of equipment? Then, I think the strongest one, which Tanwa talked about, is the question of perception. The perception of the citizen to the policeman and the perception of the policeman to the authorities above him. How would that work? Because that might also be the reason why you have this kind of situations repeating themselves.
I think you've succeeded in throwing so much into the basket for me, from the comments of the general to your questions and to what Tanwa is saying. Let me try and see how much justice I can do to the many issues you've raised. Let me start with the general who is sitting with me here in Abuja. First of all, let me thank him for actually bringing to light and some of these silent issues, which sometimes as police officers you can't even talk about, because the police is one regimented organization where you are not even allowed to unionize. So even when officers are men and organizationally we're having fundamental issues, you can't even talk about it. As police officers, you must be seen and not heard. The issue of proliferation of light weapons is real. It is real, it is factual, and there are so many factors responsible for that. The collapse of Libya, for example, left the entire West African sub-region, in fact, the entire Africa, awash with a lot of illicit weapons that were moved out of Libya after Muammar Gaddafi was overthrown and Libya collapsed. And then if you look at the history of West Africa, we've had a lot of civil wars in the past 2 decades, from Liberia to Sierra Leone to Cote d'Ivoire. In fact, the entire Mano River region has been engulfed with a lot of internal crises and civil wars. And at the end of each of these wars, what happened is when you reach peace accord, you try to demobilize, you try to retrain, you try to mop up these illicit weapons from the hands of the ex-combatants. But how successful are you in mopping up these weapons? You can never move them up 100%. And at the end of the day, these weapons begin to move, particularly within West Africa, where you've got a protocol that guarantees free movement of persons and goods. And when people are moving freely from one part of West Africa to the other, some of these weapons equally move along with them. And it's not surprising that Nigeria becomes the reservoir for the bulk of these weapons. Of course, because we are the biggest country. We have the biggest population. In fact, the population of Nigeria alone is almost equal to the rest of the West African countries all lumped together. So, and these are some of the challenges we are dealing with and tackling with. And coming to issue of funding, that is also real. Fundamentally, that's a major problem. And like the general said, every community gets the kind of police it deserves. If you pay peanuts, you will get peanuts. If you pay peanuts to your laborers, don't expect them to turn out as people who are paid with dollars, for instance. So fundamentally, we've got issues that has to do with funding. And when you are underfunded, you certainly will have problems with training, you have problems with equipment, you have problems with welfare, you have problems with infrastructure, and so many others. These problems are not caused by the sitting government. That there are consequences of successive neglect by past governments. And it is even reassuring that today we've got 2 major bills before the National Assembly. The Police Reform Bill, which for me and for the Inspector General of Police and for the entire police force is actually long overdue. We've been running on the Police Act and Regulation, which is an act that was enacted, I guess, in 1957. For a police force that is as forward-looking as the Nigerian police force, you can't run an efficient and effective organization relying on rules made several decades ago when the world and the society remained consistently dynamic. We've also got the bill on the police trust fund bill, which is seeking for alternative ways of funding the police. For me, that's the way to go. That's creative. We've tried it out in places like Lagos, where we've got the Lagos State Security Trust Fund, and we've seen how the Lagos State Security Trust Fund has fundamentally transformed Lagos and has been able to bring policing closer to the people, has been able to bring policing equipment to the doorstep of police officers and the Lagos State Police Command. And so that's the way to go. These are some of the salient issues. These are some of the fundamental issues. And until we're able to tackle this, the Inspector General of Police, no matter how much he tries, will continue to have major issues that he is contending with. You saw the IGP visiting the Senate recently. You saw him trying to defend the budget. You saw him trying to build confidence. These are all part of behind-the-scene activities that the police management team has been carrying out to ensure that we're able to get some of these bills pushed into law before the expiration of the tenure of the current National Assembly. And then coming to what time I was saying, well, I believe you 100%. But the point remains, I was not there at the gas station. And incidentally, you don't have the particulars and details of the police officer, so we are denied that very important principle of natural justice and fair hearing, we demand that we hear the other side of the story. We're not going to be able to hear for the policeman. We are not able to assess the veracity of your story, but I believe you. I believe what you've said, but I want to say fundamentally that the police is a very regimented organization. We love our superiors, we love our subordinates, we work like a family, and it will be strange for me that an NCO, based on your description, will be bold enough to begin to abuse or cast aspersion on the authority of the IGP. It is not done. It is not something that you can find within our subculture as police officers. But all said and done, there's nothing we can say about it. It's your story. I'm not there. We don't have the privilege of hearing the other side of the story. But you said something fundamental, and that's something I should be dealing with straight away. You talked about how we can put measures in place to ensure that going forward, we don't continue to experience this kind of incidents that happen in Lagos, particularly the one involving the death of Kolade. I agree with you, and a lot are being done. In fact, even before the incident happened, we've already put measures in place. And if Nigerians must be honest with us and must give us a fair assessment, you will also agree that since the coming on board of IGP Mohammed Abubakar Damu, we've not had this kind of sad incidents.
Okay, Mr. Mba, you've carried on, you've gone on, you've attempted to cover everything, as you said, that was thrown at you. But let's see if we can quickly respond to these questions as quickly as possible that were sent in by a very interested viewer. It says, many Nigerians believe that the current IGP, if he had not reversed the reforms implemented by the former IGP, then stories like that which happened to Kolade would not have happened. Is that possible? Is that true? Then the second one is this. What is the mode of operation of the various units, anti-cultism, SARS, etc.? Please answer them quickly because we're almost out of time.
In answering that question, let me quickly tell you what we are doing to ensure we don't have a repeat of this kind of incident. Number one is to ensure that we put an end to impunity. Every police officer that does something outside the rule of engagement and the code of conduct must be publicly named and shamed and brought to book, and justice must be done to the victim instantly. Number two is we are upping up trainings, particularly in the areas of weapons proficiency and weapon handling. We will be intensifying trainings on these areas on regular basis. Number three, we are also working together with civil society organizations to strengthen our curriculum as it relates to issues of respect for human rights, attitudinal change, and interpersonal relationship between the police and its public. Number four, the IGP is pursuing the concept of community policing. We don't want to have this bridge and this dichotomy, them against us. The police is part of the society, and the society should be part of the police. If we're able to work in that way, we'll be able to diffuse and de-escalate tensions, and we'll be able to carry one another along. And for the question that was sent, I don't really understand that question. I want to believe perhaps that person also don't seem to understand what we are doing. And like I've said, there are lots of reforms that Nigerians will be saying. But I've said it before, for us to have a long-lasting, far-reaching reforms in the force, we must get the National Assembly to actually pass the police reform bills. That's going to form the foundation, the fulcrum, the bedroom.
Okay, but if you can just weigh in on this one as we wind down, the police reform bill, do you think that would make any difference, especially as it regards funding and the perception of the policeman, and the perception of the people of the police?
You can't change perception in a day.
No, Eseka, we're here. Mr. Eseka, the question I asked was, do you think the police reform bill will make the difference, especially as it regards funding and then the perception of the policeman and the perception of the Nigerian citizens of the police?
Once we are able to get
General?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yes.
So the question, I'll ask the question again. Do you think the police reform bill would make any difference when it comes to funding the force and the security operations, and then how Nigerians perceive the police and how the policeman perceives himself?
Well, I do not have the content of this reforms bill, but fundamentally, let us make it very clear that we must begin to change our attitude. You know, our value system must be completely reoriented because, as a matter of fact, there is a disconnect between the strategic content and operational content of policing. In the operational level, the police may just do their best. But at the strategic level, if the wherewithal for the police to perform operationally is lacking, you cannot get anywhere. So I believe that reform bill must have captured the essence of, what you can do at the strategic level to reinforce the capability of the police at the operational level. Vis-a-vis, the perception of the police is very, very critical. The police must, as a matter of fact, try to win the confidence of the citizenry. A situation where you feel that the police is not your friend will not help you, because most of the information the police will need to do their job are going to come from the citizens. So that is why the common axiom of saying, when you see something, say something. But if the man does not have the confidence to relate with the police, to say something, then we're back to square one. So we need to reevaluate our value system. We need to know that attitudinal change is key to our everyday conduct.
All right, General. Thank you very much. Tawa, in 3 seconds.
Well, what we always say is the first step to solving a problem is admitting there's a problem. So the sooner that you realize that your men have a major issue that needs to be tackled, the sooner that we'll be able to change the issues within the ranks.
All right, thank you very much. We've been speaking with Tawa Ashiru, security expert and founder of Bulwark Intelligence, Frank Mba, Force PRO, who's just been promoted to Deputy Commissioner of Police, and General Cecil Eseka, security expert. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts with us. Sunrise will be back in a moment. Join us again.